At Iowa practice the other day, well, it wasn't quite the Tecmo Bowl high five, but still, good stuff. Hawkeyes and all other teams working on their finishing touches to summer camp. Here's our Anthony Herron on how camp is different at this stage for different types of players.
The way that training camp evolves during the preseason, it differs a bit from one player to the next, frankly, just depending on their experience level. You think about a young football player who's maybe just coming fresh out of the high school level. So those early days of camp, especially if you weren't one of these early enrollees back during the spring, you're just trying to get your wits about you. You're trying to figure out what the schematics are, what your fundamentals at the collegiate level will involve to try and see if you can be productive at this level of the sport. I tell people all the time, the bigger jump in football is from the high school level to the collegiate level, especially when you're playing major college football. So that can have your eggs scrambled for the initial weeks of camp. And then once game time is approaching, if you're one of these players who, as a youngster, has an opportunity to work your way into the lineup, that's where the reality of it sets in. So it's almost like two different preseason phases where first you're just trying to figure out college football. And then the next thing you know, you actually have a chance to play in the game. That was me. My true freshman year in Iowa City, I had no designs on stepping onto the field as a true freshman. And then just as I got through camp and started figuring things out, next thing I knew, here's Bobby Elliott and Hayden Fry telling me, hey, you know what? You should step onto the field. Brett Bielema says, yeah, I know I recruited you and you talked about maybe redshirting. We could actually use you on the field this season. And it went well. It was a decision I'm really glad that I made. For some of the veterans on the roster, training camp progresses in a bit of a different way. You know what to do. You know how to get it done, especially if there's been continuity in the coaching staff. So now if you were capable of being in cruise control at any point because you've got your spot solidified, when game time is approaching, when there are days and hours that are ticking away before you step onto the competitive field for the first time against an opponent, you're tired of beating up on all the young guys. You're tired of banging into these same teammates you've been rolling with and living with for seasons up to this point. Now is when you have to lock in, and your goal is to be the level of leader that will benefit your program, to know you are setting that example for everyone else on how much you have to get locked in when game time approaches.
You know, next time I see Anthony, I'm going to have to tell him I feel like that segment was really just a bad disguise so he could humble brag that he played as a freshman. Anyway, Ross Dellinger joins us again. Ross, we're going to talk about the top tacklers in the Big Ten right now, and we're going to stay with the theme of the Iowa Hawkeyes because they got multiple guys you could pick.
For sure, yeah, they've got two or three on that defense, right? I'll start with Jay Higgins. If you talk about tacklers, got to include him, right? 171 tackles last year, tied a school record. He's an AP preseason first teamer. You'll remember in the winter, Jay turned down a chance to leave for the NFL draft. And it depends on what scout you were talking to. He was a decently highly ranked player projected in the draft. But no, he's decided to come back and use that COVID year, his fifth season of football at Iowa, and he's just a tackle machine. 31 more tackles last year than the next closest Power Four player, and his own teammate, right? Nick Jackson is probably another one on that list. 110 tackles himself.
Yeah, the number for Higgins, 171. Program record for 171 tackles. Just insane. And yeah, Jackson to be the second guy when he's already had 4 seasons of 100 tackles in his career is something else. Another guy who has a 100 tackle season in his career is Thieneman at Purdue, but he's only played 1 year. He did it while winning the Big Ten Freshman of the Year honor last year.
Yeah, he probably hasn't played a ton, as you mentioned. Doesn't play at a powerhouse, but boy, this kid is a powerhouse type player. In fact, during the offseason, Purdue felt pretty fortunate to keep him. I think there were some overtures. He turned down some offers to go, I think, play at some other schools. You know, he broke Rod Woodson's freshman record last year for solo tackles in a season. It had stood for 40 years, and the kid doesn't only tackle. Right, he's third nationally with 6 interceptions last year. He's the engine that keeps that Purdue defense going, and he's fun to watch. Electric player. We will see him on Sundays.
One of the guys that we could have and probably would have had you talk about in this segment, unfortunately, is not going to be in it, as we got some terrible news from Rutgers. Former All-Big Ten defensive standout Mohamed Touré is going to be sitting out. He's injured and done for the season with a torn ACL. He also had to miss all of 2022 with an injury as well. That's a blow to a team that's had a lot of reasons to feel good about themselves this summer. But all those guys are guys that have been in the Big Ten previously. I want to get a couple ideas quickly from you on some newcomers to the Big Ten defensively. Why not start with the Alabama transfer, Caleb Downs? Why is everybody so impressed with him?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of SEC freshman of the year, leave the SEC. But here's Caleb Downs, right, going from Alabama to Columbus. One eye-popping note to me was Downs' season last year. He became the first freshman to lead Alabama in tackles since 1970. Incredible. So yes, he can tackle. He was the top player in the transfer portal. Perhaps with Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, the top transfer in the conference. Maybe we'll see him at running back too. It weird buzz out of Ohio State camp. A couple of days ago, he gave an interview about how he might rep a little bit at running back, and he's taking that seriously. Would be interesting. It just proves how athletic and dynamic he is as a football player, and maybe he'll get some snaps there, Mike, at running back. It might be something he needs to get into that Heisman Trophy conversation.
Well, that's good because they don't have any running back depth in Columbus this year.
Yeah. Yes, they're fresh out of running backs.
We got time for one more. How about Jabbar Muhammad? Oregon has him. He came over from Washington.
Yeah, he did. He came over from Seattle. Not transferred in before that from Oklahoma State. That's where he started his career. Plenty of experience he's got there to shore up that Oregon secondary that, remember, lost first team All Pac-12 Kyrie Jackson. Got 28 starts under his belt. More than 110 tackles in his career. So he, again, all these transfers, right? When coaches go and get them, they want a plug and play player, especially with this one, as he's going to be sliding in for some really big talent that left Oregon.
Right. Second team All Pac-12 last year. Might be the best defensive player they have, perhaps, this year.